You want me to step out so you can shit talk me a bit?
No, we're good. We're good. This is Steve Karrasch. Sorry.
Care-ish. Like, you care, but just a bit. Care-ish.
And other than not knowing how to say his name, that's about all the beef that we actually have. Some of you may have seen on my channel recently, we had a little bit of a fake beef going on. There's a video that Steve made where he talks about being the number one rated influencer, the number one Canadian real estate influencer in the country. When he says that, there's a video of him slapping me. I by no means am the number one Canadian real estate influencer at all.
I disagree.
No, it's not true. But we started a fake beef. It was kind of funny. Some of you took it really seriously and blew up his channel and gave him a lot of thumbs down. There were a lot of nasty comments. There were some nasty comments about Steve in my video. It was a joke. We were kidding. We kind of made up this fake beef because I did a video recently on the best banks in Canada to get a mortgage. I've done these videos in the past. And when I went to upload that video and do the SEO on it, which is search engine optimization, I found Steve's video was in the number 2 spot on that exact topic. And I sent him a couple text messages and kind of lit him up a little bit on why he was wrong about the banks that he chose. And what's interesting is we had different criteria for best banks in Canada. We can maybe talk about a little bit about that here in a minute. But what you need to know about Steve, and by the way, Tom Story, who I said was the number one influencer in Canada, real estate influencer in Canada,
isn't even close.
He's not bad. He's a good guy too. But one of the people in the industry that I find myself most aligned with on what I think is going to happen in the market is actually Steve. And while we had different criteria on best bank in Canada, he is a phenomenal realtor. He's in the Surrey market. And if you're watching this and if you disliked his video or if you disliked him or you unsubscribed from his channel.
You're a very good judge of character.
Please go and subscribe to his channel because you'll get some really great information, not just on his local market, but just on overall economic things as well. He does a really, really great job. So without further ado, this is Steve Karrasch, who we do not have a feud with, who we are not feuding with, and who is an absolutely phenomenal realtor in the Surrey market.
I appreciate you buttering me up.
Well, at least I could do after my followers destroyed your channel.
They did. I didn't get very many views on the video after, but hey, what are you going to do?
All publicity is good publicity.
Apparently.
I mean, interaction. I don't know. Wanted to, first of all, get a little bit of a pulse on what's going on in the area west of the mountains. What's going on here right now? How's the market looking?
The market is different than it was. So my market where I trade is the Fraser Valley. So a lot of people don't understand. Vancouver is basically 3 real estate boards. Well, there's Vancouver Island, which is a whole different thing. But let's say the Lower Mainland is Vancouver board, Fraser Valley board where I am, and the Chilliwack board. Chilliwack board is very, very small.
Okay.
Generally speaking, the agents cross-pollinate quite a bit, right? So you'll get a lot of the same feel. However, in town, you're obviously going to get the downtown people, higher net worth people and all that. And where I am, you're going to get people like me who, 2 kids at home in the suburb life and, soccer and baseball practice and all that stuff. In my marketplace where I am, we are seeing a slow. And a lot of people are scared about that. But what I'm trying to tell people is that you have to realize that we're coming off of the most insane market that we've ever seen by a lot. I remember when I first got into the business and we went through 14, 15 months of supply. And if you don't know what that is, I can explain it. But we went through these crazy buyer's market. And then in 2015, the market dropped to 3 months of supply and everybody in my office lost it. They didn't know what to expect. And just this January, we were at less than 1 month of supply, meaning that if a property came to market, it was almost guaranteed to sell at almost any price, right? So now we've come off of that. Everybody's starting to lose their, I was going to say shirts. They're not losing their shirts. They're losing their minds because they're expecting that was going to stay. And we all know, you obviously know, the market is cyclical. There are going to be ups and there are going to be downs. And right now, I think we're headed towards a down.
Interesting. How down do you think it's going to get?
Well, crystal ball. It's going to get almost as down as interest rates will drive it. That's where I think it's going to be. So here's what I like to do. I like to take a number. Let's say in my marketplace, a detached home in the suburbs, $1.6 million. Wasn't crazy. $1.6 million, I think I did the math at 2.79%. You're the mortgage broker. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it was like 2.79%, 20% down was something like, what was it, $5,200 a month? $4,200 a month? Whatever the number was. Let's say it was $4,200 a month. When I did that same calculation at today's rates, that property is 1.3. So that buyer, assuming, now qualification, you tell me what qualification is, but assuming that they want the same payment or can only afford that payment, they are now having to see a price drop of about 15%. Now, do I think if that calculation is correct, do I think we'll see a 15% slide back? I don't think we will, but we could see 12, right? It seems like I don't think you're going to get the slide back to make your life easier in the payments. Your payments are going to be harder to make and prices will come down, which is super scary if you look at the market in a very short term.
Yeah, totally. We talked on, there's another video, by the way, you can go and look on Steve's channel for that one, where we talk a little bit more about banks and economics and whatnot. But in that video, we talked a little bit about this term ceteris paribus, which is an economic term. It's Latin.
You talked about that. I have no idea what that means. He's a smart guy. I'm from Surrey.
Ceteris paribus means all else being equal. So what you do in economics is when you're looking at different variables, you're assuming everything else stays the same, and then you're just manipulating the market based on that variable. And that gives you a prediction based on that. But other things can affect it. But for the purposes of doing the prediction, you're holding everything else so that you're only measuring one thing at a time. And when you look at interest rates, speaking of feuds and fake feuds and real feuds, some other real estate YouTuber did a video on me talking about this rule, but we talked about the 1%, 10% rule. And, you know, Steve's right with respect to the headwinds that the market faces from higher interest rates. And how we know that is what we call the 1%, 10% rule. And it's not like a rule that I made up. It's a really commonly used rule in the real estate industry and the mortgage industry throughout North America. And it's just simple math, right? So when you look at a 1% increase in interest rates, it actually affects the affordability of a home by about 10%. So in other words, if you increase interest rates by 1%, it gets about 10% more expensive from a payment perspective and an interest perspective for that borrower.
But where that is obviously going to fall apart is, that city may have a different influence. Jobs are going that city, jobs are going away from that city. So it could act that exact same rule in the same condition for two different product classes, areas, whatever else is going on in the world at that time could drive two cities in the different direction.
Yeah, totally. We talked about that in your video, is if you have a place like Calgary, which is largely energy dependent, and then you have a place like Vancouver, which is really no longer, in my opinion, a Canadian market. It is an international market. And there's international influences that come into this market. Well, obviously, those two markets have different things playing on them. And if you look at Toronto and Vancouver right now, Toronto and Vancouver are experiencing lower sales than they were previously. Calgary, on the other hand, just set a sales record last month, primarily because energy prices are up. And that's a really good thing for Alberta, which means that we're going to have this market that's going the opposite direction of what Vancouver and Toronto do.
My thoughts are that Calgary and Edmonton, I guess a little bit as a result, or Alberta, is actually going to do fairly well by their standards for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some years of hardship that we've got some making up to do for, and I think we're probably going to see the headwinds of those interest rates kind of stall it out a little bit, but we've definitely got some room to go up, and we've got rising incomes again, and you know, it's a good time for the Calgary market. Now, if you're a BC or an Ontario investor and you think maybe I should buy in Alberta, keep in mind, it's a cyclical market. When energy prices do go down, and they will go down, and they're probably going to go down a lot more next time than they did the last time, then the real estate market's going to suffer. And if you bought the wrong property, you're going to be left holding the bag. So keep that in mind when you are listening to different real estate networks that are teaching to buy real estate in Alberta. It doesn't really operate the same way as the rest of the country does.
I'm going to go further than that. And I'm going to say, personally, I know you try and stay on the positive, and I get a little cheekier on my channel. I think if you're coming from Vancouver and you're coming from Toronto and you're going to Calgary or Edmonton to buy, you're insane. I do. Yeah. I think you're insane. I think I'm going to say it. It's a stupid move. Now, personally, I almost made that stupid move. I looked at Edmonton about a year ago and thought, this is amazing. Like, they're cash flowing little condos, 170 grand, cash flowing positive at less than 20% down. Like, how can this go wrong? And then I spoke to people that own rental condos there that live here. And it can go wrong, and it can go very wrong. But it's a lot like here where we are, we get a lot of people in town that want to wreck property. And they're like, I'm going to go buy a property on the Sunshine Coast. I'm going to go buy a property in Powell River or wherever they're going to go. Osoyoos may be a little different, but they're going to go out of town and buy a property. They don't realize how not liquid that property is. They also have to find another city dweller or suburbanite that wants to waste that much money on a property. And there are not many of them that want to do that, particularly in a down market. Don't buy in a market that you don't understand. I mean, a lot of people are making some silly decisions anyway and almost playing at being an investor rather than thinking about it seriously. But going to a market that is just cheaper and you don't understand how it works is quite possibly one of the stupidest traps you can fall into, because it looks great. It's a honeypot. You're going to fall in and you're going to end up in a bad situation.
Yeah. I mean, talk about amateur hour, right? Like, that's what it is out there. It's amateur hour in real estate investing. I was always taught that unless you are a professional investor, and that's the type of investor who can get on his own jet and fly to the places he is investing if something goes wrong and you need to be there instantaneously, then you just don't buy in a market that you aren't familiar with, that you don't live in. A really good friend of mine has about $7 million worth of property that he's accumulated over the last 20 years. And he's in, a lot of it's in a town that's about an hour and a half outside of Calgary. And he says even that hour and a half for him quite often feels like it's too far from a being outside the market perspective.
It's funny you say that, because I bought my first ever investment property, and if anybody watching knows the Surrey area in Newton, not a good spot. Not a good spot. But
I wouldn't know that.
I'm from the wrong side of the tracks, right? But I bought it in Newton, an area I'm very familiar with. It ended up being a 15-minute drive from my house. Not bad. I sold that property. My current investment property that I bought just about halfway through the pandemic, I can almost throw a rock at it from my house. Nice. And one of the things was, when the tenant calls, a tenant never calls you to say hello, ever. It's only when something's wrong, broken, whatever. So Friday night, 5:00, you're heading out to the White Spot. That's a good BC reference. You're heading out to the White Spot with the family, and your phone rings, and it's your tenant, because I've been in this exact spot. You know your weekend's ruined. If that investment property is 10 hours away, that's a problem. If it's 45 minutes away, it might even be a bigger pain in the butt, because now you're probably maintaining it yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, having management companies and contractors, and when you're not there, like, it's expensive, and you better hope that they're really good at what they do and that you can trust them, because I mean, the fastest way to give up a heck of a lot of your equity, other than having a massive penalty on a 5-year fixed mortgage, which I don't recommend for investment properties, is to have some property manager there who's basically holding your wallet and is paying for all the things to be fixed that just went wrong.
Do you have investment properties?
Yep.
Yeah.
We do.
Do you manage them yourself?
So I'm a little bit of a weird investor from the perspective of I buy condos. And
Me too.
I buy 3 to 4 story walk-ups that were built in the 1970s to 1980s. The reason why is because they're usually concrete built. There's no elevator, which is the single most expensive thing to maintain in our property. And in Alberta, there's what's called the Residential Tenancies Act. By the way, if you're in Ontario and BC, just skip to the end of the video right now. I don't want you to hear any of this. But basically, there's the Condo Act and Residential Tenancies Act. And the Condo Act supersedes the Residential Tenancies Act. So all the rights that a renter has, they have, unless the condo board decides that they don't like that renter. So if you have a problem tenant and you can't get rid of them because of the rules of the Tenancy Act, the condo board has some leverage there. On top of that, the condos are almost always professionally managed. If something goes wrong, I'm only responsible for the paint and what's inside them, and which means maybe appliances. And it's just most of the management is done there. And people say, well, you have like condo fees, strata fees.
That's worth it. That's actually the exact same. I feel like we're really bonding here, not slapping each other around on YouTube anymore, because I feel the same way. I actually prefer well, obviously the price point in my market, $1.5 million is unobtainable for a lot of people. But just the fact that I don't have to worry about the roof leaking, the you know, something leaks in the parkade, foundation cracks, that's not me, right? It's like toilet leaks, sink leaks, call me. Otherwise, strata.
And I'd way rather have a share of the responsibility for the costs than all of the costs associated with like a roof blowing off a building or something like that, right? So
100%.
That's how I invest, and we've got multiple ones of those. The thing about the pandemic is we were trying to do everything we could to buy them in cash as well. As much as I'm a mortgage broker and I sell debt, I don't necessarily believe you should stay in it. I also don't necessarily believe that real estate should be your only investment. And I believe in common sense investing, doing things like buying in markets that you don't understand. It's not common sense. It's common stupidity right now. So don't do that. So, I mean, it's interesting, but you know, I think that's what's cool about our fake beef on YouTube is, you know, it was fun. I apologize for
destroying my channel,
for destroying your channel, but I really do see eye to eye. And I think as far as real estate agents go, you know, I run a real estate company. I ran the largest independent real estate company at the time in Alberta. I was in the process of purchasing it back in 2012 after I got burnt out on mortgages. So I know the real estate industry really well. My father was a real estate agent, which is coincidentally why I'm not a real estate agent, is because I know the hours and the hard work that you guys have to put in, contrary to what YouTube commenters would say. And, you know, it's not an easy job, but the biggest thing is when you find real estate agents that have integrity and that are hard workers and that are as knowledgeable as you are. I mean, to me, that is the most important thing about finding a real estate agent, is like that integrity piece is everything. And from there, everything else just kind of falls into place. We were talking before we started filming about one of my takes on what the single best way to not choose a realtor is. So how to weed realtors out. Hot tip for you guys. If you're interviewing realtors, always interview multiple realtors. Or if you know them, you don't have to do that. But if you don't know them, interview multiple realtors. Or if you don't know them through YouTube, interview multiple realtors. But then ask them, you know, tell them who else they're up against. And then watch for the reactions. And I'll tell you one thing. The one person that comments on the other realtors and drags them down, the one who says, here's the worst advice I've ever heard for this reason, the one who says that person does this, this, and this wrong, and doesn't talk about what they bring to the table and doesn't talk about what they can do for you, that is the realtor you want to avoid at all costs. Because in this business, it's the integrity that the realtor has that is going to be the thing that saves you the most money. My buddy Brad McCallum said it really well. When you're hiring a realtor in this market, and in this market, I mean, the last couple of months, people think anybody can do the job. It's super easy. Doesn't matter who you hire. It's not true. Because when you're hiring a realtor, you're hiring a fiduciary. You're hiring somebody who it's their job to protect your investment. And the single most important piece in that is knowing that that person that you've hired to protect your investment and to get the most money possible for your property if you're selling it, or get you the best deal possible if you're buying it, the number one thing you need to look for is that integrity piece. And that's the one thing I love about Steve. I love that about Tom's story too. But I definitely love that about Steve. And, you know, the Feud thing was a joke, but it was so much fun to do. And it's so cool to actually sit here with you and have a conversation, because you're the type of guy that I think people need to be dealing with.
Well, I appreciate you pumping my tires. Obviously I agree. What do people do when they're listing their home? They often, search for the cheapest option, which, I mean, I can't blame you, because if you don't know the value, you're trying to determine how much of the cost is the value. And that can be like, there are people that buy Honda Civics, there are people that buy Mercedes, right? And you got to find out which one you want to be. It is really, really hard to know as someone that, I mean, you and I breathe real estate every single day. a lot of people only think about it once every 8 years when they move.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to get through the noise and figure out, is it the guy who has his face on the bus bench that is the best option? And it may be.
Mm-hmm.
They may just have the biggest advertising budget. You don't know, and you have to learn these things for yourself. And that's why, recommendations are good. And that's why most business comes from repeat and referral. Mm-hmm. It's actually the reason that I chose to expose myself on a platform like YouTube. Mm-hmm. It's because I do know that my team is the best team for the job. I know they are. I've got
because you built it that way, right?
But I've got 2 agents on my team that I mentored under anyway, right? Like I've got two 35-year plus agents on my team that are now, trying to step out the door, but good luck. You've never been to a realtor's retirement party, just funerals, right? But I've also got another couple on my team, Chani and Eric, and it's just this experience that is really hard to gauge, right? So we get most of that through referral, but it's not easy for me to have someone walk through the open house because those people walking through the open house are adversarial anyway, right? I'm just another idiot in another listing trying to sell them that listing. Mm-hmm. And I know that my team is the best. I know, I'm going to pat myself on the back. I think I think I'm one of the smartest guys in the business. But it's really hard for me to show that to you when you're walking in the open house and I got a suit on and I'd rather be watching the football game with my family on a Sunday. It's really hard to do that. So that's why I tried to put out the value first. My philosophy is probably similar to yours in this medium. Get the value out first, and then the person will pick you, right? If you just try and get them to sign on the dotted line first, there is no value in that, right? Like you have to show people why you are the right ones to pick. And thankfully, using this medium more than bus benches, mailers, even more than phoning my past clients who I know love and appreciate me, this one has been amazing because the people appreciate the knowledge they're getting from people like you. So we're just pumping each other's tires here.
Cool. And if you're going to choose, or if you're looking for real estate information, check out Steve's channel. It's some of the best in the country. And if you're in Surrey, don't go looking to Steve for a second opinion. Just choose him. You've seen his information. It's there. It's plain as day. Just choose him as your realtor, because I can guarantee you're not going to get a better experience from anybody else. Maybe you will. But the chances of you getting a phenomenal experience are low, unless you just choose Steve.
Well, I appreciate the sentiment, but really, I mean, the people here are going to try and make the choice for themselves. What I want you, and that kind of comes from a conversation we had a little bit before taping, was the amount of people that are reaching out to me or other people on the same platform because they have the respect and seem to know what they're talking about, but they've already picked somebody else to represent them. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we are fiduciaries and we do have licenses and we can't go stepping on other agents' toes. So if you have an accepted offer on a property and you're going to phone and talk to another agent that's not your agent, first of all, if that second agent even speaks to you, you should know that they're already not playing by the rules. They are missing that. You are not allowed to comment on a transaction in BC anyway, that I know of.
It's actually national because it's interference with the contract.
Well, whatever it is.
Yep.
I know it's in my marketplace in BC. You cannot interfere in a contract that you are not a party to. So I can't give you advice on that. And if you don't trust the person that you've hired, you've done a crappy job at hiring. Really,
and it's time to do some firing.
Well, I'm not going to breach agency either, because that's you can breach.
That's
agency.
General advice. That's not me saying your agent sucks, so you should fire them. But if you feel that way, that's a conversation that you. I think
you have to pick the why did you hire that person, and then why are you looking at someone else for the information, right? You have to make. But I understand how hard it is to pick the right person, because a lot of people are very, very good. A lot of people know what they're looking at, what they're looking for in an agent. A lot of people don't know what they're looking for in an agent. A lot of people don't know what they're looking for in a mortgage. They come to you, they want best rate. Done. Well, that's easy to do, but that's not the best for you in the long term. So
it's like dating and thinking you're looking for a blonde when in reality what you're looking for is a nice human being, right?
Yeah. Totally.
You got to know what you're looking for. Sometimes people just don't know.
it can be really, really tough. And I don't blame anyone out there that has not been exposed to a good agent for not knowing how to pick the right agent for them, right? Because you do have to, if it's the neighborhood guy, that might be the right guy for you, but it might not be, or girl. If it's a family referral, maybe you don't want your granddad's realtor from, that still doesn't have or still has a pager or whatever, right? Like whatever that is, you just have to do your best, and hopefully that's what my goal is to put out the information.
Yeah. Right. Amazing. Cool. You're doing a great job. Thanks for coming on the channel.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
Just remember, we don't hate each other.
We don't. Thank you.